Okay, so it seems like the audio is fine, so let's start. Okay, so before we start, I'd just like to go over what Acunetix Web Vulnerability Scanner is. So Acunetix is it's an automated tool for web application security testing, and it automates the tedious task of manually testing, websites and web applications, and so we can test anything that is available over HTTP or HTTPS. And in addition to the automated testing that Acunetix provides us with, we also have the ability to extend any automated tests using the manual penetration testing tools that come inbuilt with Acunetix. Okay, so before we get into the demo of the product, I do want to go over some stages, that a scan goes through. And so we first start with the crawling stage, and in the stage, the crawler will analyze the entire website, starting from a single URL, and then it will start to map out the directory structure of that site. And as soon as that process has finished, then we can actually start to scan for vulnerabilities. So if you can't crawl the site, if you can't properly analyze the things that you're going to scan, then you can't properly scan the site. Next, obviously, we move on to the vulnerability scanning stage. So here, Acunetix will actually scan the entire site based on a range of checks that we choose. Also opt to scan for everything that Acunetix checks for, and we'll be covering this. And we can also specify exactly what checks we want the scanner to run. So if we're only interested in, say, cross-site scripting or SQL injection, we can narrow that down based on built-in profiles, but you can also create your own what we call scanning profiles to really target the vulnerability scan to meet your requirements. Okay, and then we move on to results. So once the scanning has started, then we start to get results, and these results start to show up inside of the alerts node. And this alerts node starts to get populated with alerts. And if we had to look into each alert, then we could find out more information about that alert. Possible resolutions, more information about the vulnerability. We also get CVE, CWE, and CVSS scores as well. And once we have the results and the entire scan is completed, then we move on to reporting and remediation. So once the entire scan is complete, then we can opt to export a report if we wish. We can even retest specific alerts that allow us to fix specific vulnerabilities, and we can obviously rerun the entire scan if we wish. Okay, so now it's time for us to jump into to a demo. So I don't know if there were any questions at this point, so I'll just pause for 1 second to see if there were any questions at this point. You can leave questions inside of the chat box, and I'll try and get to them, during the presentation. Okay, so let's continue. So I'm going to pull up here. Okay, and I'm going to start out by just going through a basic scan, and I'm just going to go through the wizard, and we'll sort of go through features as we go along. So I'm going to start by creating a new scan using the new scan wizard. And I'm going to be testing a local implementation of our test PHP website. So if you wanted to follow along, you would be able to do this on testphp.vulnweb.com. I'm just going to be using a local implementation of posted on vulnerable.com. Okay. So, and again, we can start by either running a scan from a single URL as we have at the moment, or we can also decide to, for instance, run something from a saved crawl result. So let's say we have already crawl the site and we want to simply just start the site from a saved crawl, we can do that as well. And we can finally also schedule a scan so that we'll start, say, every Monday, for instance. So for now, I'm just going to scan a single website, and I'll just go ahead and say next. Okay, so now we have the ability to choose the scanning profile, and here it is set at default for now. And default essentially will scan for every kind of vulnerability that Acunetix scans for. But we can obviously choose a predefined scanning profile if we wanted to. So if we wanted to only scan for cross-site scripting, for instance, or only SQL injection, we can do so. And if I had to cancel this wizard out and go to scanning profiles right here, and I wanted to, say, create a specific profile for, say, the Heartbleed vulnerability, I can do so, and I can check just that, or say, some particular requirement that I had. I can create a scanning profile just tailored to what I need, and in this case, I'm just going to be using the default profile again, but you can customize that. Also, under scan settings, we can customize our scan settings. So here there are a range of different options that we can customize about the scan. And for the most part, you wouldn't need to tweak any of them if you wanted a standard scan, but there may be things that you would want to customize. And we don't have the time to go through everything here, but one thing I do want to point out is the scanning mode. So by default, Acunetix will use the heuristic scanning mode. And I'd just like to go over the three of them very quickly. So the first one is the quick scanning mode. And essentially this scanning mode will only test for the first value for every parameter that the scanner finds. Obviously, this is a faster scan, but you'd only be testing so much in your scan. So the default, which is the heuristic scan, will try to automatically determine which parameters would require more complex testing than others. And this is default, again, and it obviously tries to balance out the scan speed and scan depth. And obviously extensive is on the other end of the spectrum. It will try all combinations of the parameters that have to be tested. And obviously it will generate more HTTP requests, so it's going to be a slower scan. So heuristic is selected by default. Okay, and there are a range of other options that we can choose from. But I'm just going to leave everything to its default. So I'll click OK. We also have the ability to save reporting data to the database, so we can generate reports later on. And by ticking this box, we are asking Acunetix to automatically save this to our reporting database. So I'll just leave that checked. We have the ability to also allow us to exclude any particular files that we don't want to scan. So say there's a particular page that we crawled that we do not want to scan, or like, for example, we only want to scan a particular page. We can ask the scanner to present us with a list of the files that it has found during the crawl, and then it will present us with that list and ask us, what do we want to scan, and we can, check whatever we want to scan or omit from that list. And I'm going to check it, and we can take a look at it. We also have the ability to define a list of URLs that the crawler should be processing at the start of the scan. So let's say there are a set of, for example, 5 URLs that do not feature anywhere within the link structure of the site. For instance, they would be, some configuration directories or such that do not feature within the structure of the site. We can provide them in a text file to the scanner, and the scanner can pick those up and also test them as well. I don't need to select this for now, so I'll just say next. Okay, and now we're fingerprinting the web server, so we're getting some information about it. And here, for instance, we have some information that we can correct if we wanted to, but this seems to be okay. And this will help the scan get optimized for specific technologies. So here it has recognized that the scan, excuse me, that the server is running PHP and it's on Windows. So there might be some optimizations that I'm going to point out in a moment that Acunetix would have made because it detected them. So I'll just say next here. Okay, and now we come to the login sequence portion of the scan wizard. So as we know, obviously most websites require, or web applications require, some kind of authentication, and Acunetix can support HTTP authentication as well. But what we'll be doing today using the login sequence recorder is also authenticating in a form, right? So form-based authentication. So I'm going to click for a new login sequence here. And I'm going to, give it the URL, so that's fine. I'll say next. And now I'm just going to browse through the site to basically log in. So I'm just going to click your profile here. Go to enter my credentials. And also, I do want to point out one small thing. So there may be some websites that require you to either enter a CAPTCHA or say some multi-factor authentication token or something like that. You can use that kind of mechanism with Acunetix WVS, and you can do that by clicking the Mark for Manual Intervention icon up here. And essentially, manual intervention will pause the scan and show up a window that will allow you to enter that CAPTCHA or that multi-factor authentication token, and then once you're done, you can progress with the rest of the scan. So that's also something that. So in this case, I don't need it, so I'm just going to go ahead and click login. Okay, and now that I'm logged in, now I want to click next. And here I want to set up any restricted links, right? So there are links that we do not want the scanner to click. Most definitely one of them is the logout link. So we do not want the scanner to get logged out. But obviously there might be other links that we want to restrict the scanner from clicking. And we can do this in as well. So logout link for me is fine. I'll just go ahead and say next. Okay, and now we need to set up in-session detection. So in-session detection is a way for the scanner to know whether it is logged in or logged out. If it is logged out, it's going to try and rerun the login sequence to obviously log itself back in. And we need to be able to identify whether it is logged in or so. The scanner needs to detect some kind of pattern, and it can detect this automatically for us. So I'll just say yes to auto detection. It has detected it for us, so clicking close, we can see that it detected the pattern based on the logout link. So obviously in a logout session, there's going to be no logout button. So obviously it's looking for that particular pattern. And we can change condition as to when the session is valid. And we can, if we wanted to, we can do this ourselves. So we can highlight something that's unique in our HTML response here, find a pattern from selection. So this seems fine for now. So I'll just go ahead and say next. Okay, here we get a summary. So we get a summary of all our login actions. We can remove or add anything here. So we can also take a look and amend anything that we want here. And once that's done, I'll just go ahead and finish. And in this case, I already have a login sequence with that name, so I'll just overwrite it. Okay, so I'll just say next for the wizard. And here we are at the finish stage, so we'll just click finish and launch the scan. But before we do that, I do want to point out a few small things. So here we have case-insensitive crawling that has been enabled for us automatically, and that is because this is on a Windows machine. So Acunetix has used that information that, the server is running on Windows. and it ticked case-insensitive crawling for us automatically. And there are also cases where, for instance, the site you're trying to scan would respond differently with a mobile user agent. And we can also, inside of Acunetix detect this. And if it were the case in this site, it isn't. But if it responded differently for a mobile user agent, then Acunetix will display an option for us here, and it will ask us what kind of user agent we want to scan with. And here we also have the ability to scan additional hosts. So if that were the case that we wanted to do so, this is obviously detected from some of the pages that the scanner would have started to crawl. And here, finally, so before we click finish, if we made any customizations to our scan settings, we can save them out as a settings template, and we can reuse those the next time. So I don't need that for now, so I'm just gonna go ahead and finish. And here we started to crawl the application, and so let's go over some of the some of what's going on here. So first thing to note is that we have one scan thread up here, and we can take a look at everything about the scan. So we get a bird's eye view of the scan on the right-hand side, and basically a rundown of all the vulnerabilities that's live as it's happening. Under target information, we can take a look at some basic information about the target. So whether it is responsive, whether operating system it's running, etc. And here we actually got a prompt for HTTP authentication. So Acunetix actually detected automatically that HTTP authentication may be required. In this case, I'm just going to ask it to not prompt me again, but you can obviously use that if it were necessary. And we also get information about the statistics of the scan. So how long it's been running, the average number of the number of requests, the average response time, and so forth. And we also get some information about the progress of the scan, which I will get to because the crawler seems to have beat me to it. So here, basically, in the beginning of the wizard, we checked allow us to select the files which to scan, right? And here we have the ability to sort of cherry pick which files we want and which ones we want. So if there was a particular file that we wanted to omit, for instance, this file, we can remove that, and that won't be scanned. Obviously, we can filter any files here, and we can sort of pick one to be scanned. So I'll just say OK, and I'll to it. And now we started to actually run scan. The scanner portion of the scan is starting to be invoked, right? So the crawl has been completed, and now we start to scan the site. And right here underneath the progress section, I get some information about sort of the percentage complete and the status of the scan. Okay, and just before we go into each alert, I do want to sort of pause a little bit and let that scan run and go over AcuSensor a bit. So I'm not sure if anyone has sort of read a bit about AcuSensor. Perhaps you've read a bit about it. I'm just going to try and explain what it does, but obviously if there are any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. So AcuSensor is a plugin for .NET and PHP sites, right? And it acts as an interface between Acunetix and your website. And with AcuSensor, we have the ability to identify more vulnerabilities than just with a traditional web application scan. And it's because it is a gray box scan, because we have a sensor on the inside. So a sensor is deployed on the server side, and that relays information back to the scanner. And obviously, therefore, we can confirm certain vulnerability types and reduce false positives in that way as well. So it provides a more accurate scan because obviously anything that is being detected by Acunetix is then being double checked and confirmed on the back end. In addition to that, obviously thanks to AcuSensor, there could be things like SQL injection vulnerabilities where we actually get the exact SQL query. So we actually see the exact SQL query, how it would have run in the SQL interpreter. And you can also get information like the vulnerable line of code. So it's down to that detail. Um, and and again, obviously, there are other features like the ability to detect all files that would have been present on a web server because it does a backend crawl on server. So any files that would have not been detected, you know, by the crawler, perhaps there is something in a particular directory that is again not linked anywhere, that would be able to be picked up using AcuSensor. And obviously, we can, using that technology, we can also bring to light some backdoor applications, perhaps, that might not have been anywhere. So using AcuSensor, you can do that as well. And if you're using .NET, with version 9.5, which is the most recent version of Acunetix, there has been added support for .NET 4.5, as well as .NET MVC support. And again, obviously, it's .NET and PHP web applications that that AcuSensor supports. So I don't know if there were any questions for AcuSensor. If there are, just leave them in the chat box, and I'll try and get to them. Okay, so I have a question. Some customers think that if they do not have .NET applications based in MS SQL, they can't have any attacks as SQL injection. WVS supports this kind of applications. Um, I'm not exactly sure I understand the full question, but just because just because it's not .NET, it does absolutely not mean you cannot have an SQL injection vulnerability. Obviously, SQL injection vulnerabilities are exist on sites that use SQL-based databases, and it can be any kind of backend. So MySQL, MS SQL, Postgres, Oracle, all of that kind of all of those database backends can if there is poor coding on the front on the application in the web application, or perhaps there's a mistake somewhere, it can lead to a SQL injection vulnerability if not. And obviously, there's not, it's not just SQL injection that one would be worried about. So if you don't use an SQL-based backend, there are several other vulnerabilities that you would want to be careful about, particularly cross-site scripting, which would be so it's something that is client side. And if you have any further questions on that, please let me know, and I'll try to answer. So moving on, up Acunetix back up. Okay, so let's go through a particular vulnerability, and I'm going to pick a SQL injection vulnerability right here. And the reason I picked a SQL injection vulnerability is I want to show, AcuSensor in action here. So first of all, we have AcuSensor logo here. So we know this vulnerability has been detected by AcuSensor. And first of all, we see the source code line. And really, I mean, this information is really great for a developer, because you can literally just open up that particular line of, that particular file with that particular line of code, and we know that somewhere there's something wrong with the way we're querying the database. In addition to that, here we can take a look at the SQL query that has been run in the SQL interpreter. So this is shows you that as well. Actually, be able to get a bit of a more thorough understanding of how this vulnerability sort of shape. And we also here have information about so how this attack was we can take a look at HTTP headers as well. So that's request and response headers. And we can also, if we wanted to, view an HTML response if that's of any help. And here, obviously, since this is a SQL vulnerability, SQL injection vulnerability, here we get the usual error for SQL injection. Something similar to this would be as well if SQL injection vulnerabilities, and you would be able to also launch this attack with the HTTP editor, so you can play around with the request. And we're going to see the HTTP editor in a short while. We can retest this alert. So let's say we fixed it, we can retest this particular alert and check if it's still there. Did the development team actually solve it? We can retest this without rerunning the entire scan from the top. Obviously, you'd want to rerun an entire scan from time to time because, obviously a lot of things change from time to time. But if you want to just run that one particular alert, just test if everything has been fixed, you can do that. And obviously, moving down here, we can take a look at the impact of the vulnerability. So perhaps this is a bit obvious because it's SQL injection, but if it were something a bit more obscure, we'd get some information about that particular vulnerability, how to fix the vulnerability. There's a classification area as well, so you can correlate this with CVSS, CWE scores, and the like. And here there's also detailed information if you need it. You can about that particular vulnerability. And there's also web references that you can refer to. These references are both from the Acunetix website as well as authoritative third parties on the subject. And similarly, so a cross-site scripting vulnerability right here would look very similar as well. So again, attack details and to take a look at HTTP headers and sort of this would show up in this way as well. So before we move on, I do want to point out the verify tag on some of the vulnerabilities that we see here. So on some vulnerabilities, you would be able to see the verified tag. Now, just because you don't see verified on some other vulnerabilities does not mean that they're not real vulnerabilities and that they're not there and that they're exploitable. But obviously, there are some vulnerabilities that can be further tested than others, and in that case, we would be able to put in the verified tag, when we're sure that something has been 100% verified, and you can test it if you want to further, if this further. But the verified tag is there to help for vulnerabilities that we know are % there. Otherwise, you can obviously test this out with the HTTP editor, and that's what we're going to be doing. So I do have a question about can WVS solve these issues for you? And the answer is no. Acunetix is a scanner, and I would say an attempt to try and solve any of these issues, automatically would be a bit far-fetched. I'd have to say. Obviously, this is it's a scanner, and obviously, solving an issue usually requires some kind of human intelligence, especially if a particular set things up in a specific way. It's not something that I would see. Okay, so let's move on, and I will start to demo the HTTP editor, which is the first in the list for some of our pen testing tools. And let's pick a specific cross-site scripting vulnerability here. And let's edit this with the HTTP editor. Okay, so first thing we'll do here is add additional headers and remove any headers. And this is, it's a tool that allows us to, for instance, edit the request variable. So this is a GET request, so we can add and remove want to and change them around, and really tinker with the request. And once we're happy with the request, we can start to send the HTTP request. And here we can take a look at the response headers. So we can take a look at all the headers that have been returned. We can take a look at the response data, and sure enough, this is just here. Basically, we're putting in a foreign object as well. And right here we have the prompt ourselves. And here also we can take a look at the structural analysis of that page. If this were a page that had any additional structure, we'd be able to take a look at this here as well. Okay, so that is the HTTP editor. I do want to go over the fuzzer, so for that I'll export a SQL injection vulnerability. Let's see, let's pick one. Let's try this one for instance, and I'm going to say export to the HTTP fuzzer. Okay, so the HTTP fuzzer is a tool to send random and unexpected data to our web application. So the idea is that, for instance, here we'd want to fuzz this particular fuzzer. In this case, it's a get variable. So I'm going to add a generator, and let's say I'll add a character generator. Okay, and I can modify behavior of this generator, and let's say I'll pick 65 to say 75. These are ASCII values, okay? And I'm going to insert this into the request. And essentially what it's doing here is it's creating a variable, right? So that every time the request is sent, changes the ASCII character. And obviously this can, become more complex, but I'll just keep it simple for now. Okay, so there are a couple of requests that have been generated here, and we can take a look at, so this is the request, and we can see the letter increment time. So let's take a look at the response, and let's view the page actually, and we can see that here there is something wrong, right? There's it's clearly expecting a number, and we're providing something else, right? So we're actually getting an SQL injection error, and this can obviously be seen here, and this is something that we obviously want to fix, obviously. So that would be the HTTP fuzzer. Obviously, you can change this, as I said, you can change this around, and you use it in different, provide different unexpected random data to the application. Okay, I do want to go over the HTTP sniffer real quick. So, and essentially the HTTP sniffer is nothing but a proxy that allows us to do a number of things, but mostly it allows us to build a structure, so a custom structure. So let's Firefox here. Actually, let me better start the sniffer. Okay, and it's running on port 8084. I'm going to open up Firefox. And you can use any browser you want to. I'm just using Firefox. And we need to configure this proxy settings ourselves. It's using a manual proxy, so that's okay. Have to navigate to the website. So okay, and perhaps I have to browse a little bit around. And let's say I've done my manual crawl. I can head over back to Acunetix, and now I have a manual structure. Okay, so I'm going to stop that. And now I can, first of all, I can take a look at response. So this will work just like a proxy that with. But what it does that's really nice is that we can save a proxy log, and we can let's save this out to the desktop, for instance. And we can navigate to the site crawler, and we can actually build a structure from a sniffer log. So we can actually import this entire structure that we crawled and say, okay, we can actually merge this with currently open crawl results as well. So if you wanted to run an automatic crawler and then merge anything that yourself, you can do so. And here we basically get a very sort of neat structure, and I can exclude anything, for instance, crawl. And if I had to right mouse click this and say scan the site, only these 3 files will be scanned. So that is a manually crawling the site and targeting exactly what you want to scan. Okay, one other thing I do want to go over before we go into web service scanning is the compare results tool. So let's say we have two particular sites that, sorry, two particular results, I meant, that we want to compare. We've run 2 scans, we've saved those scans as WVS files, and we want to compare the two, say a before and after scan. I can compare these 2 files based on a number of criteria here, and I'll just accept the defaults and I'll say start. And this is going to compare both results, and we can take a look at, in this case, I believe it's a before and after scan. So we can take a look at what has remained the same, what has been fixed after, and this is the same for every kind of ability. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show also the details of each alert, right? So the alert details are pretty much the same as we've seen before. So you can also easily get an idea as to what or not. And we can take a look at all this information right there too. And if I had to navigate to the bottom here, I can also compare the site structure. So it's also important to know if the site has changed and where has it changed. So I would be able to see that, in this case, this directory, everything has remained the same. So that is the compare results tool. Quite handy if you want to compare 2 scans together. And we can also, as we're going to see, you can also get a report out of this and compare the scans against each other. So that's also a very good tool. I do want to go over the web services scanner very quickly. So Acunetix automatically has the ability to scan WSDL SOAP-based web services. So if you have a WSDL file that you want to use, perhaps a WSDL URL or a WSDL file as well, you can provide a WSDL URL right here, and I'll just say next. We get a rundown of the web service, and we can opt to remove anything that we don't want to scan, any inputs. And here we also get the ability to set specific inputs. So if I wanted to change this username or this password, I can obviously do so. And once we've done that, I can click finish. This will start the web service scan for me. And similarly here, we can take a look at the site structure of this particular web service. And here as well, we can take a look at this particular SQL injection vulnerability, for instance. So obviously the WSDL input, the attack details would contain it rather than, get requests, for instance, or something like that. But this is also very similar. Okay, so once this scan has run, again, we would be able to generate a report out of this, but I do want to leave the reporter for so we can. We also have a web services editor, so if I wanted to import this web service and send a particular request here, do so, and I response in XML as well. Take a look at the WSDL structure and also the WSDL XML structure as well if I wanted to. And with that, we sort of bring it close to the web services scanning. And I do want to go over the scheduler real quick. So if I had to navigate to Tools, Scheduler, this is going to open up a web-based interface for me. And this allows us to sort of, first of all, provide a web interface to several users, perhaps your team of people, and you want to provide a interface for everyone to schedule a scan. So you can do that, and by clicking New Scan here, I can select a single site, for instance, or I can select multiple websites, and I can also select a web service if I wanted to. I'll just stick to a single site, and I just want to put in my site URL. So okay, so I put in my URL there. I can define how often I want this to repeat itself. So either once, perhaps we want this to repeat every Monday. So say every week, every Monday. Obviously, you can have it day, every month, or mostly. I'll just leave it for every Monday, and I'll provide a time. That's okay for the demo, and we can specify advanced options. So first of all, what scanning profile do we want it to run? Sorry. And obviously, mind you, here we will also see scanning profiles that we created ourselves. So it's not limited to the scanning profiles that are built in. What login sequence do you also scan settings? So default is the only selected so far, but if you created your own scan settings, you can choose those too. Scan mode, and if there are any excluded hours. So you can pause the scan in a given time frame. So let's say you only want the scan to run you can select no weekends, for instance. You can obviously set this up yourself. So if you wanted to go to application settings, scheduler, and navigate to the bottom here, you can create your own template and sort of map out exactly when you want to exclude scanning hours, and the scanner will actually pause the scan for that duration of time. And here we can decide to save the scan results to a database, save scan logs if we wanted to, and we can also generate a report. DC reports. I'll just leave this to PDF and a developer report, and we can also set an email address so that we can be scan being complete. And if we selected a report, we'll also get that report in the email. So I'll just click OK, and this should show up my scheduled scan here. And obviously, if we click on scan history, at the moment there's nothing because the scan hasn't ran. But we'd be able to see scan history of the scan. And we'd also be able to edit this. So if I wanted to change any of the options here, I'd be able to do so. And I don't need this, so I'll just go ahead and delete it. And I can obviously also delete scan results if I wanted to. I'll just hit delete. Okay, so that is the scheduler. I do want to go over the reporter very quickly, and then we can go over some features that are unique to Acunetix, and then we can take questions. So I'll go to Tools, Reporter, and this will bring up a separate reporting console. And I just want to go over the different kinds of reports that Acunetix can create, and then we'll generate a developer just to see what it looks like. So first one would be the affected items report. So this would simply display information about where a vulnerability would be located. A developer report would go into far more detail, would tell us how we can fix a particular vulnerability, it would provide us with request headers, description details, alert summary, and also links to read more about a particular vulnerability. An executive summary report would provide us with a very high-level report. This is mostly suitable for managers and executives. A quirk report is a little bit more detailed than an executive summary, because this report would list one vulnerability per file parameter. A compliance report is kind of report depends on what compliance standard you choose. So this will range from CWE, SANS, HIPAA, ISO, OWASP, CI3, and there actually are others as well that you can choose from. Scan comparison report would basically compare two scans together, very similar to what we mentioned before with the compare results tool. And finally, a monthly vulnerabilities report would show all the vulnerabilities that were found during the past month. And I'd like to now generate a developer report, so I'm going to click the report wizard. Now I can display all scans, or I can actually filter which scans I want. So I'm just going to go ahead and display all scans. I'm going to pick which one I want to run. So I'll scan that, so I'll click next. And right, actually, I missed this right here. You can actually remove any alerts that you don't want. For instance, let's say we only want some of the informational alerts. Let's say we don't want to show broken links. We can do that as well. Once again, we can customize the properties of this report. So if we wanted to show additional information, we can do so. I'll just go ahead and I'll click. Okay, so a report has been generated, and let's go over it. So first of all, we get an idea about the scan. So scan details, what threat level we're at, what sort of does the vulnerability distribution look like for the site. We get an alert summary, so we can take a look at any alerts, sort of bird's eye view of everything. And then we start digging down into the alert details. So for blind SQL injection, for instance, right here, we can take the description, the impact, recommendations, as well as any references. And finally, probably the most important thing is the affected items. So here we take a look at so the path, any details. So that would be what tests were performed, and request headers as well. And obviously, again, this can be customized to include more information, but I decided to sort of keep it a bit concise here. But you can certainly include, for instance, the HTTP response as well if you want. Okay, so we can save this out, obviously, to a number of different formats. Let's just say I wanted to export to PDF or Word. PDF format, you can really do that. And something else I wanted to point out was that if you, so by default, Acunetix makes use of a file-based database, but if you wanted to store your database results in a central location, you can do that using Microsoft SQL Server database. So there's also support for that. Okay. I'm just going to switch over back to the presentation and go over a couple of technologies in Acunetix, and I feel these technologies really set Acunetix apart from other products in the space. So first thing is deep scan. technology. So deep scan is a new technology wherein we bring full support for HTML5 and JavaScript-based web applications, especially single-page applications and JavaScript-heavy websites. And through support for all these latest and greatest technologies, there's also better detection for DOM-based cross-site scripting. So DOM-based cross-site scripting is a variant of cross-site scripting that only happens on the client side. Nothing gets sent to the server, and so you really need a very fully aware sort of browser running in the scanner to be able to detect construct things like a DOM. We actually also provide a stack trace for DOM-based cross-site scripting vulnerabilities as well. So that's deep scan as well, and obviously thanks to deep scan we're able to crawl complex websites that are JavaScript heavy. So any that, as I said, single page applications and sort of more modern web application would be able to be handled through scan. And also something worth mentioning is AcuMonitor. So AcuMonitor is a technology that is comes inbuilt with the license of Acunetix. So you have the ability to identify vulnerabilities that would otherwise require an intermediary service. And thanks to AcuMonitor, would, for instance, be able to detect things like blind cross-site scripting. So with blind cross-site scripting, just to give an example, Acunetix would first start by sending a payload to the particular website, and if that payload gets stored and then executed sometime later, possibly much later, even once the scan is finished, AcuMonitor is then notified. So the payload actually executes. It notifies AcuMonitor, and AcuMonitor would then send you an email with the payload that you would be able to download and open up inside of Acunetix, and you'd be able to do some more investigation as to what led to that blind cross-site scripting vulnerability. In addition to blind cross-site scripting, there's also support for detecting email header injection, server-side request forgery, XML external entity attacks, as well as host header attacks. And all of these vulnerabilities, as I said, require some kind of intermediary service, which is what AcuMonitor is. And this is sort of what a blind cross-site scripting alert would look like when you get an email from AcuMonitor. So you'd be able to download a file that would be attached in that email, and as I said, you'd be able to investigate this further. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, please feel free. I'll get to answering them. And if you have any further questions during your evaluation, perhaps you like to ask something, please feel free to either contact support by phone or by email, and that's our email right there. And once again, thanks for your attention.